Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. I never thought a spilled glass of orange juice would be the thread that unraveled my entire life. But sometimes the smallest moments reveal the deepest truths about the people we think we know. The sound of leather cutting through air is something you never forget. It's sharp, quick, followed by that distinctive snap that makes your stomach drop even when you're expecting it. But hearing it directed at your 6-year-old son while you're helpless to stop it, that changes everything. My wife took out belt for our son when he spilled juice. I found myself thinking, the words burning in my mind as I watched Tommy's face crumple in terror. The orange juice was still spreading across our kitchen floor, a sticky golden puddle that seemed insignificant compared to what was about to happen. "Rebecca, stop!" I lunged forward, but her sister Linda was faster, snatching my phone from my hands as I tried to dial 911. "It was just a belt." Linda laughed, her voice sharp with mockery. "You're raising a brat. You should thank your wife." Her husband Greg nodded for the kitchen doorway, his massive frame blocking any escape route I might have considered. "She's right, Mike. Kid needs discipline. You're too soft." They had no idea what I would do next. But then again, neither did I. Let me back up and tell you how we got here, because the belt incident wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment everything became crystal clear. I'm Mike Holloway, and 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. 34 years old, successful construction company owner, beautiful wife of 8 years, and a son who meant everything to me. We lived in Millbrook, a small town outside Nashville where everyone knew everyone, and reputation mattered more than money. My construction business, Holloway Builders, had grown from a one-man operation to a crew of 23 men. I'd built half the custom homes in the county, including the sprawling ranch house where Rebecca, Tommy, and I lived. I was proud of what I'd accomplished, especially considering I'd started with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox my father left me when he died in a factory accident when I was 19. Rebecca and I met at a church function when I was 26. She was 24, a kindergarten teacher with honey blonde hair and the kind of smile that made you forget your own name. Her family had money. Her father owned 3 car dealerships across Middle Tennessee, but she'd chosen teaching because she wanted to make a difference. I fell hard and fast, and when she said yes to my proposal after 6 months of dating, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. The first few years were good. Really good. Rebecca was everything I'd imagined in a wife. Supportive, loving, and when Tommy came along, she seemed to transform into the perfect mother. She quit teaching to stay home with him, and I worked extra hours to make sure she never had to worry about money. But looking back now, I can see the cracks that started forming around year 5. Rebecca began spending more time with her sister Linda, who'd married Greg Paulson, a man I'd never liked. Greg was one of those guys who never worked an honest day in his life, but always had money for expensive trucks and fishing trips. He dealt in investments and opportunities, though no one could ever explain exactly what he did for a living. Linda was the opposite of Rebecca in every way that mattered. Where Rebecca had been sweet and gentle, Linda was sharp and calculating. She had this way of making cutting remarks and then laughing them off as jokes. "I'm just being honest," she'd say whenever someone called her out. The change in Rebecca was gradual. She started criticizing the way I disciplined Tommy, or rather, the way I didn't. "He needs a firm hand, Mike," she'd say. "Boys need to learn respect." I'd grown up with a belt across my back more times than I could count, courtesy of a father who believed children should be seen and not heard. I'd sworn I'd never lay a hand on my son, and I'd kept that promise. Timeouts, taking away privileges, talking through problems, these were my methods. They worked fine until Rebecca decided they didn't. The first time she hit Tommy, he was 4. He'd drawn on the wall with crayons, and before I could stop her, she'd smacked him across the face so hard it left a red handprint. I'd been furious, but she'd cried and apologized, saying her sister had told her she was being too lenient. "Linda says I'm spoiling him," she'd sobbed into my chest. "She says you're making me weak. I should have put my foot down then. Should have told Linda to mind her own business and insisted Rebecca never hit our son again. Instead, I talked to Rebecca about gentler methods, thinking I could guide her back to the woman I'd married. I was wrong. The incidents became more frequent. A wooden spoon for talking back. A yank on the arm for not eating his vegetables. Each time, Rebecca had an excuse, and each time, Linda was behind it, filling her head with ideas about old-fashioned discipline and modern parenting weakness. I started documenting everything, taking photos of bruises, writing down dates and times. I wasn't sure what I planned to do with the evidence, but something deep inside me knew I'd need it eventually. Then came a morning that changed everything. Tommy had been excited about having Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg over for Sunday brunch. He'd helped me make pancakes the night before, measuring ingredients with the serious concentration only a 6-year-old could muster. When breakfast time came, he was bouncing in his chair, chattering about the cartoons he wanted to show Uncle Greg. The orange juice glass was full, maybe too full. When Tommy gestured enthusiastically while telling a story about his friend at school, his elbow caught the glass, sending it tumbling across the table and onto the kitchen floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca's face went dark in a way I'd never seen before. Without a word, she stood up, walked to the pantry closet, and pulled out the leather belt I didn't even know she'd bought. Rebecca, no. My voice was calm, but my heart was racing. It was an accident. Accidents have consequences, Mike. Her voice was cold, controlled. Tommy needs to learn that. Tommy started crying before she even took a step toward him. I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean to. Sorry doesn't clean up messes, Thomas. She never called him Thomas unless she was angry. Turn around. That's when I moved, reaching for my phone to call 911. I'd had enough. This was going to stop, right now, even if it meant having my own wife arrested. But Linda was faster, snatching the phone from my hands with a laugh that made my blood boil. "It was just a belt," she said, her eyes dancing with amusement. "You're raising a brat. You should thank your wife." Greg stepped into the kitchen then, his 6'4" frame filling the doorway. At 41, he was built like the college football player he'd once been, though his muscle had gone soft around the edges. Still, he was intimidating when he wanted to be. "She's right, Mike," he said, crossing his arms. "Kid needs discipline. You're too soft." I looked at my son, cowering in his chair, tears streaming down his face. I looked at my wife, belt in hand, her jaw set with determination. I looked at Linda, still holding my phone, smirking like this was the best entertainment she'd had all week. And I looked at Greg, blocking my path to help my son. That's when something inside me broke. Not snap, broke, like a dam giving way after years of pressure. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" Linda's smirk faltered. I said, "Get out. Now." Greg pushed off from the doorframe. "Now hold on, Mike. Get out." The roar that came from my throat surprised even me. "Get out of my house." Rebecca lowered the belt, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Mike, what's gotten into you? What's gotten into me?" I turned to face her, and she actually took a step back. "What's gotten into you? When did you become someone who terrorizes our son? When did you start listening to—" I gestured at Linda, her about how to raise our child. "I'm just trying to." "You're trying to beat a 6-year-old for spilling juice." I knelt down next to Tommy, pulling him into my arms. He was shaking. "It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here." "Mike, you're overreacting," Greg said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. I stood up slowly, Tommy still in my arms, and looked Greg directly in the eyes. "If you're not out of my house in 30 seconds, I'm going to make you leave." "And Greg, you don't want to find out what that looks like." He must have seen something in my face that convinced him I wasn't bluffing. After a moment of tense silence, he grabbed Linda's arm. "Come on, let's go." Linda threw my phone on the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. "Fine, but don't come crying to us when he ends up in jail because you couldn't teach him right from wrong." They left, and the house fell silent except for Tommy's quiet sniffling against my shoulder. Rebecca stood in the middle of the kitchen, still holding the belt, looking lost. "We need to talk," I said. What I didn't know was that our marriage was already over. The woman I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And what I was about to discover would make the belt incident look like a minor disagreement. That evening, after Tommy was in bed, Rebecca and I sat in our living room for the hardest conversation of our marriage. She tried to justify what had happened, explaining how Linda had convinced her that my permissive parenting was damaging Tommy's development. She showed me articles, Mike, studies about how children need structure and consequences. Structure doesn't mean terrorizing him with a belt, Rebecca. It's not terrorism. It's discipline. The way I was raised. The way you were raised. The way I was raised was wrong. That's why I promised myself I'd never hit my son. We went in circles for hours. She couldn't see that what she was doing was abuse, and I couldn't understand how the woman who used to sing lullabies to our baby had turned into someone who could make him cower in fear. Finally, around midnight, Rebecca went to bed. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how to fix this. That's when I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter where she'd left it charging. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but something made me get up and check the screen. It was a text from someone named D with a heart emoji next to the name. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Greg and Linda are perfect alibis. Your husband has no idea how often we've been together. My world tilted sideways. I scrolled up through the message history with trembling fingers, and what I found made me physically sick. Months of messages, plans to meet, declarations of love, pictures I never wanted to see. D was Derek Massey, a guy I'd gone to high school with. He was a real estate agent now, divorced, and apparently had been sleeping with my wife for over 6 months. The worst part? Linda and Greg knew. They'd been helping cover for her, providing alibis for her shopping trips and girls' days out. I sat in my kitchen until dawn, reading through message after message, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time through text exchanges. Rebecca had never loved Derek in high school. He'd been a nobody, a skinny kid with thick glasses who got picked on by guys like me. But somewhere along the way, he'd grown into himself, built a successful business, and caught my wife's attention. The messages revealed a plan that made my blood run cold. Rebecca and Derek had been discussing divorce proceedings, figuring out how to maximize her settlement. She'd been documenting every purchase I made, every business decision, preparing to paint me as irresponsible with money. Linda had been coaching her, teaching her which lawyers to contact, how to present herself as the victim. They planned to take Tommy. They planned to take my house. They planned to take half my business. And they thought I was too stupid to figure it out. By the time Rebecca woke up that morning, I made copies of everything. I transferred money to accounts she couldn't access. I called my lawyer, my accountant, and my most trusted foreman. But more importantly, I'd made a decision that would change all our lives forever. I was going to destroy them all. Rebecca came downstairs around 9, already dressed in her yoga clothes, hair pulled back in the ponytail she wore when she was trying to look younger. She was meeting Derek, though she didn't know I knew that. Good morning, she said, not meeting my eyes. I'm going to yoga with Linda, then shopping. I'll be back around 5. Have fun, I said, not looking up from my coffee. She hesitated in the doorway, maybe sensing something different in my tone, but then left without another word. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway before I called my brother Danny. Danny Holloway was 2 years younger than me, but twice as smart when it came to certain things. While I'd built houses, he'd built a private investigation business that served clients across 3 states. He specialized in infidelity cases, corporate espionage, and what he called reputation management. If you needed to know something about someone, Danny was your guy. Mike, what's wrong? He could hear it in my voice immediately. Everything. I need your help. 3 hours later, Danny was sitting in my kitchen, looking through the evidence I'd gathered. He whistled low when he saw some of the messages. Jesus, Mike, how long has this been going on? 6 months that I can prove. Maybe longer. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. What do you want to do about it? That was Danny. No judgment, no lectures about forgiveness or working things out. Just straight to business. I want to know everything. About Derek, about Linda and Greg's involvement, about the lawyer she's been talking to. Everything. That's easy enough. But Mike, he paused, choosing his words carefully. What's your endgame here? You file for divorce. You'll probably get joint custody, maybe full custody if we can prove the abuse. You'll keep most of the business, the house. You'll be fine financially. I thought about Tommy cowering in his chair, about the belt in Rebecca's hands, about the months of lies and planning behind my back. That's not enough. What do you mean? I met his eyes, and I could see he understood before I even said it. I mean, I want them all to pay. Really pay. Not just lose half their assets in a divorce settlement. I want them destroyed. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Mike, be very careful what you're asking for. Once you go down this road, there's no coming back. There's already no coming back. The question is whether I'm going to be the victim or the one holding the hammer. He nodded slowly. Okay, give me a week. What Danny uncovered in that week was worse than I'd imagined. Derek wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was stealing from his clients. As a real estate agent, he had access to empty houses during showings. He'd been using those houses for drug deals, taking a cut from a dealer named Carlos Vega, who operated out of Nashville. Derek's real estate business was basically a front for money laundering. Linda and Greg were deeper in the drug trade than I'd suspected. Greg's mysterious investments were actually loans to dealers, with interest rates that would make a mob boss blush. Linda handled the books, washing money through fake consulting contracts with Derek's real estate company. The best part? Rebecca knew about all of it. The messages Danny found on Derek's computer, obtained through methods I didn't ask about, showed she'd been helping plan expansion into neighboring counties. My sweet kindergarten teacher wife was going to be a drug money accountant. They'd planned to use my business as a front once they got control of it in the divorce. Holloway Builders would become a cash-washing operation for half the dealers in Middle Tennessee. I'd built that company with my bare hands, and they wanted to turn it into a criminal enterprise. But Danny's investigation also revealed something else. They were all careful. Very careful. The drug money was hidden behind layers of legitimate transactions. The evidence was there, but it would take a lot of work to prove in court. They'd probably get away with it if I just turned them into the police. That's when Danny made a suggestion that changed everything. You know what would really hurt them? He said, showing me a photograph of Derek's warehouse on the outskirts of town. If someone anonymously tipped off Carlos Vega that Derek was skimming from the drug money. Is he? Oh yeah, about 20%, according to the books Linda keeps. Vega just doesn't know it yet. I stared at the photograph, understanding immediately what Danny was suggesting. You're talking about getting them killed. I'm talking about letting criminals handle criminals. We just provide information. What happens after that isn't our responsibility. It was tempting. So tempting I could taste it. But I shook my head. Too easy. I want them to suffer first. I want them to know it was me. That's when I came up with a plan that would destroy all four of them systematically, legally, and completely. It started with Tommy. The next Monday morning, I took my son to see Dr. Patricia Westbrook, the best child psychologist in Nashville. I brought along the photographs I'd taken of his bruises, the documentation of Rebecca's abuse, and a detailed account of the belt incident. Dr. Westbrook was a small woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of gentle manner that made children feel safe. Tommy opened up to her immediately, describing not just the physical abuse, but the emotional terror he'd lived with for months. Mommy gets so angry, he told her, sitting in a chair that dwarfed his small frame. She says I'm bad. She says I make Daddy weak. My heart broke listening to him, but also hardened my resolve. Dr. Westbrook's report was devastating for Rebecca. She recommended immediate supervised visitation only, documented probable abuse, and suggested Tommy needed extensive therapy to deal with the trauma. I filed for emergency custody that Wednesday. Rebecca was served with papers at Derek's house on Thursday morning. Danny had been watching them, and he made sure the process server arrived just as Derek was leaving for work, still in his bathrobe, and clearly having spent the night. The photographs were beautiful. Rebecca called me screaming. You can't do this. You can't take Tommy away from me. Watch me. This is about Sunday, isn't it? About the belt? Mike, I was just trying to discipline him. No, Rebecca. This is about you being an unfit mother. This is about you abusing our son while planning to steal my business with your drug dealer boyfriend. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. See you in court. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Thomas Brennan, the best family attorney in the county and a man who owed me several favors from construction work I'd done on his house. Tom, they're going to come at me hard now. Are you ready? Mike, I've been ready since you showed me those text messages. They don't have a prayer. He was right, but it didn't stop them from trying. Within 24 hours, Linda had convinced Rebecca to hire Catherine Walsh, a shark of a divorce attorney from Nashville who specialized in taking men to the cleaners. Walsh immediately filed countermotions claiming I was abusive, that I'd been having an affair, that I was hiding money from the business. The affair allegation was particularly creative. They claimed I'd been sleeping with my office manager, Sandra, a 62-year-old grandmother who'd been like a mother to me since I started the business. The money-hiding allegation was closer to true, though not for the reasons they thought. I had been moving assets, but into trust funds for Tommy's future, not to hide them from Rebecca. Walsh also tried to get the abuse allegations thrown out, claiming I'd coached Tommy to lie about his mother. The war was on. For 3 weeks, it was brutal. Walsh attacked my character, my business practices, my relationship with Tommy. She painted me as a controlling husband who'd snapped when his wife tried to assert independence. Rebecca played the victim perfectly. She cried on cue, spoke in soft, wounded tones about how she'd only wanted what was best for Tommy, how she was devastated that I turned her child against her. Linda and Greg provided sworn statements about my violent temper and erratic behavior. They described the Sunday morning confrontation as me flying into a rage over normal child discipline. Derek stayed in the background, but his presence was felt. He was funding Rebecca's legal fees, giving her a place to stay, providing emotional support. They were careful not to be seen together publicly, but Danny's surveillance caught them together constantly. The first court hearing was a disaster. Judge Morrison was an old-school guy who believed in traditional families and second chances. He looked at Rebecca, blonde, well-dressed, tearful, and saw a mother being torn away from her child by an angry husband. He ordered temporary joint custody with supervised visits for both parents pending a full investigation. I walked out of that courthouse furious and humiliated. Rebecca and her legal team looked smug. Linda actually smirked at me in the hallway. That night, Danny found me in my garage, taking my anger out on a piece of wood I was supposed to be turning into a toy chest for Tommy. They think they've won, I said, not stopping my work. Have they? Not even close. I set down my tools and looked at him. It's time for phase 2, which is, we burn their whole world down. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I didn't need to prove Rebecca was connected to Derek's drug operation in family court. I just needed to make sure the right people found out about it at the right time. Danny and I spent the next week setting up what he called the domino effect. We carefully leaked information to the DEA about Derek's operation, providing just enough detail to get them interested without making it obvious where the tip came from. We also reached out to Carlos Vega through intermediaries, letting him know that Derek had been skimming from the drug profits and that Greg had been charging him inflated interest rates on loans. We provided evidence of both, taken directly from Linda's meticulous records. But the masterstroke was what we did with Rebecca's divorce lawyer. Catherine Walsh was dirty. Not drug-dealing dirty, but tax evasion, client fund-stealing dirty. Danny's investigation had uncovered a pattern of her borrowing from client trust accounts to cover personal expenses, always planning to pay it back before anyone noticed. She'd done it with Rebecca's retainer fee, using Derek's drug money to pay for a vacation to the Bahamas while claiming to be working on the case. We documented everything and sent it anonymously to the Tennessee Bar Association. Then we sat back and watched the fireworks. The DEA raid happened on a Tuesday morning. Derek was showing a house to potential buyers when federal agents swarmed the property. They found 2 kilos of cocaine hidden in the basement and enough financial records to trace the money laundering operation back 6 months. Derek folded immediately. Within hours, he was giving up everyone he could think of, including Greg, Linda, and half the dealers in the county. Carlos Vega's response was more direct. Greg's truck was found in the Cumberland River that Wednesday, with Greg still in it. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, but everyone knew better. Linda disappeared, just packed a bag and vanished, leaving behind her house, her car, and a husband's body floating in the river. Rebecca was arrested Thursday morning as an accessory to money laundering. The DEA had found evidence of her involvement in Derek's financial records, including plans to use Holloway Builders as a front operation. Catherine Walsh was disbarred and arrested Friday afternoon for misappropriating client funds. By the following Monday, Rebecca's entire support system had collapsed. Derek was in federal custody, Linda was gone, Greg was dead, and her lawyer was facing criminal charges. I picked her up from jail after she made bail. She looked terrible. Unwashed hair, pale skin, clothes that had been slept in. The confident woman who tried to take my son and my business was gone, replaced by someone who looked broken and desperate. We drove in silence for 10 minutes before she finally spoke. I'm sorry. For which part? Abusing our son? Cheating on me? Planning to steal my business? Or getting involved with drug dealers? She started crying. I never meant for any of this to happen. Yes, you did. You planned all of it. Derek said. Derek's facing 25 to life in federal prison. What Derek said doesn't matter anymore. I pulled into the parking lot of the diner on the edge of town and turned to face her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over full custody of Tommy to me. You're going to waive any claim to the house, the business, or any other assets. You're going to plead guilty to whatever charges the federal prosecutor offers you. Mike, please. I'm not finished. In exchange, I won't release the additional evidence I have about your involvement in the drug operation. Evidence that would turn your accessory charge into conspiracy and add another 10 years to your sentence. Her face went white. What evidence? I handed her a folder containing printouts of text messages Danny had recovered from Derek's computer. Messages that showed Rebecca had been actively involved in planning the expansion of the drug operation into neighboring counties. She read them with shaking hands, her face growing paler with each page. How did you get these? Does it matter? The question is what you're going to do about it. She was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the traffic passing by. If I sign everything over to you, you'll keep these secret as long as you stay away from Tommy and me. Permanently. What about visitation? He's my son, too. I leaned back in my seat, studying her face. She still didn't understand. Still thought there was a way to negotiate, to salvage something from the wreckage she'd created. Rebecca, you terrorized our 6-year-old son with a belt because he spilled juice. You planned to steal my business and turn it into a front for drug dealers. You cheated on me for months while pretending to be a loving wife and mother. What exactly makes you think you deserve visitation? I made mistakes. You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. She signed the papers that afternoon. The federal prosecutor offered her a plea deal, 3 years in minimum security prison in exchange for testifying against Derek and providing information about the money laundering operation. She took it. Derek got 28 years. He'll be 67 when he gets out, assuming he survives that long in federal prison. Linda was never found. Danny heard rumors that she'd made it to Mexico, but I didn't care enough to verify them. Catherine Walsh got 18 months for stealing client funds and was permanently disbarred. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, watching Tommy eat pancakes and laugh at cartoons on his tablet. He was seeing Dr. Westbrook twice a week and was getting better every day. The nightmares had stopped. He wasn't afraid of sudden movements anymore. He was learning to be a kid again. The abuse charges against Rebecca had been dropped as part of her plea deal, but it didn't matter. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. Danny stopped by around noon, bringing coffee and donuts from the shop downtown. "How's he doing?" he asked, nodding toward Tommy, who was building something elaborate with Legos in the living room. "Better. Good days and bad days, but more good ones lately." "And you?" I thought about it. 6 months ago, I'd been a happily married father who thought he had the perfect life. Now, I was a single dad running a construction business, while my ex-wife served time in federal prison for drug-related charges. "I'm good," I said, and realized I meant it. "Any regrets?" I looked at Tommy, completely absorbed in his Lego creation, safe and happy and free from fear. "None." Danny nodded. "What they did to you to him, they got what they deserved. They got justice. Is there a difference?" I thought about that for a moment. Rebecca was in prison, but not for abusing Tommy, for money laundering. Derek was in prison, but not for sleeping with my wife, for drug trafficking. Greg was dead, but not because he'd helped them plan to steal my business, because he'd ripped off the wrong criminal. Justice would have been a family court judge who saw through Rebecca's act and protected my son. Justice would have been Derek and Linda and Greg facing consequences for their actual crimes against my family. What they got was karma. Dark, brutal karma delivered by the same criminal world they'd chosen to embrace. No, I finally said. I guess there isn't. Tommy came running into the kitchen, then holding up his Lego creation, a house with a garage and a little plastic man standing in the driveway. Look, Daddy, I built our house. That's awesome, buddy. Who's the little man? That's you. You're protecting the house from bad guys. I hugged him tight, breathing in the smell of his shampoo and feeling his small arms wrap around my neck. That's right, Tommy. Daddy always protects our house. Later that evening, after Tommy was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a beer, looking out at the property I'd built with my own hands. The house, the shop, the gardens Rebecca had planned, but I'd planted. All of it was mine now, free and clear. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Linda. I know what you did. I'm coming back for you. I read it twice, then deleted it and blocked the number. Let her come. Let them all come. I'd learned something important over the past year. I wasn't the man I'd thought I was. I wasn't the easygoing contractor who avoided conflict and tried to see the best in everyone. I was someone much more dangerous than that. I was a father who would do anything to protect his son, and a man who never forgot and never forgave betrayal. The belt incident had revealed who Rebecca really was, but it had also revealed who I was underneath the surface. And that man was someone you didn't want to cross. I finished my beer and went inside to check on Tommy one more time. He was sleeping peacefully, sprawled across his bed with stuffed animals scattered around him like guards. I tucked him in properly and kissed his forehead. Sleep tight, buddy. Daddy's got everything under control. And I did. Everything was under control, and it was going to stay that way. Because some lines, once crossed, change you forever. And once you cross them, you discover you're capable of things you never imagined. The belt that Rebecca raised against my son had been meant to teach him a lesson about consequences. Instead, it taught me one, and I was a very good student. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Hello and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Vincent Mercer remembered exactly when he'd fallen in love with Camilla. It wasn't their first date or even their wedding day. It was a random Tuesday, watching her sketch architectural designs at their kitchen counter, completely absorbed in her work. The afternoon light had cast golden highlights through her auburn hair, and he knew then he'd spend his life protecting that quiet passion. That memory played through his mind as he drove home early from his 3-day business trip, canceled after his final meeting fell through. 12 years of marriage had dulled some of that initial wonder, but Vincent still felt a warm anticipation about surprising her with an early return. Vincent had built his construction company from nothing. The son of a steelworker, he'd worked summers on build sites and paid his way through engineering school. Now, Mercer Construction handled multi-million-dollar projects across 3 states. Vincent was respected and sometimes feared for his exacting standards and unflinching integrity. He was fair but firm, and those who crossed him rarely got a second chance. His business rivals learned quickly. Vincent Mercer never forgot a slight. Camilla had once been captivated by his intensity. An architect by training, she'd met Vincent when her firm was contracted for one of his early projects. Their courtship had been quick and passionate. She'd been drawn to his ambition, and he to her creativity. They balanced each other, his pragmatic drive complemented by her artistic vision. But lately, things had shifted. Vincent couldn't pinpoint exactly when the change had begun. Perhaps around the time of the Thompson Luxury Resort project, when he'd been working 16-hour days for months. Or maybe when Camilla's design for the Rivera Cultural Center had been passed over, leaving her withdrawn and resentful. As Vincent turned onto their street in the exclusive Oakwood Heights neighborhood, he noted Camilla's car in the driveway, along with another vehicle he didn't recognize, a sleek black Audi. Probably one of her friends, he thought. She'd been spending more time with them lately. The house was quiet when he entered through the garage, setting down his briefcase and rolling suitcase. He heard voices from the back patio, Camilla's light laugh, a deeper male voice, and another female one. Smiling, he walked toward the sound, expecting to surprise her. But Vincent stopped short at the sliding glass door. Through the partially drawn curtains, he saw his wife seated at their outdoor dining table with two people, a man with carefully styled dark hair and an athletic build dressed in expensive casual wear, and a blonde woman Vincent recognized as Tara Wilson, Camilla's friend from her architectural firm. Something about their body language made him pause. The man sat too close to Camilla, his hand resting casually on her arm. Vincent watched as Camilla leaned into the touch, her smile intimate and familiar. Instead of announcing himself, Vincent stayed hidden in the shadows of the kitchen, a cold uneasiness spreading through his chest. He wasn't a man given to jealousy or insecurity, but his instincts, the same ones that had guided him through countless business negotiations, were sounding an alarm. "Do you think you're ready?" Tara was asking, holding up her phone. "We could film it again if you want." "No, I think I've got it down," Camilla replied, sitting up straighter. "I've been rehearsing in my head for weeks." The man, Vincent still didn't know his name, squeezed Camilla's shoulder. "You'll be fine. Just remember what we talked about. Stay firm. Don't let him manipulate you." "I know, Nate," Camilla sighed. "It's just 12 years is a long time." 12 years wasted, Nate corrected, and Vincent felt something harden inside him. "You deserve to be happy. We deserve our chance." Vincent watched as Nate captured Camilla's lips in a kiss that she eagerly returned. It wasn't a first kiss. It was comfortable, practiced. His wife and this man had been intimate for some time. Vincent could have stormed out then, confronted them in righteous anger. A part of him wanted to, but that wasn't who he was. Vincent Mercer was calculating, patient. He believed in understanding the full scope of a situation before acting. So he remained silent, watching as his life unraveled before him. Chapter 2. Behind the Curtain. For 3 days, Vincent maintained a perfect facade. He pretended his meeting had been rescheduled, giving him time to observe and gather information. He slept beside Camilla, kissed her good morning, and discussed renovation plans for their vacation home as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, he studied her. The way she checked her phone when she thought he wasn't looking. The vague explanations about late nights at the office. The new clothes and lingerie he never saw her wear. Vincent hired a private investigator, Theodore Blackwell, a former military intelligence officer who now specialized in high-profile cases requiring absolute discretion. "I need everything," Vincent told him during their meeting at a deserted construction site. How long it's been going on, where they meet, what they planned. Blackwell nodded, his weathered face expressionless. "You'll have comprehensive surveillance within 48 hours. But I should warn you, Mr. Mercer, people rarely find peace in these details." Vincent's smile never reached his eyes. "I'm not looking for peace." The investigation revealed that Nathaniel Nate Prescott was a rising partner at a competing architectural firm. The affair had been ongoing for approximately 9 months, starting shortly after Camilla's professional disappointment with the Rivera project. They met primarily at a luxury apartment Prescott kept downtown under a property management LLC. Camilla had told Vincent these were late nights, working, or evenings out with friends, particularly Tara Wilson, who had been covering for them the entire time. What disturbed Vincent most wasn't just the physical betrayal, but the elaborate performance Camilla had constructed. She maintained a calendar of fabricated events and stories. She kept a separate phone hidden in her design portfolio. She'd even created a fictional client to explain her occasional weekend absences. The meticulous nature of her deception struck Vincent as a personal insult to his intelligence. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a drunken mistake. This was calculated, sustained, deliberate. While reviewing the surveillance photos at his office late one night, Vincent received a call from Blackwell. They're meeting tomorrow evening with a real estate agent, the investigator reported. Prescott's looking at properties in the Harbor District, high-end condominiums. So they're planning to live together, Vincent said flatly. It appears that way. And there's more. Blackwell hesitated. Mrs. Mercer has been meeting with a divorce attorney. Patricia Dunham specializes in high-net-worth separations. Vincent felt a cold clarity wash over him. Thank you, Theodore. I believe I have what I need. That night, Vincent accessed Camilla's laptop while she slept. Her password wasn't difficult. The name of her childhood dog combined with her birth year. The same combination she used for everything despite his warnings about digital security. There, he found emails discussing property divisions, financial settlements, and legal strategies. One particular message from Camilla to Tara caught his attention. Pat says I should get at least half the company's value since I contributed significantly to its growth through my designs. With that plus the houses and investments, I'll be set. Nate says I should push for more, but honestly, I just want out. I'll have my freedom and enough money to never work again if I don't want to. Vincent closed the laptop, a strange calm settling over him. He had built his company through years of brutal work and calculated risk. He had protected Camilla, provided for her, believed in her talent. And her response was to plan his financial evisceration while sharing her bed with another man. The next morning over breakfast, Camilla mentioned she had a late meeting with a client. Actually, she added, stirring her coffee, it might run really late. Don't wait up. Vincent smiled. Do what you need to do. I understand. And he did understand. Far more than she realized. Chapter 3. The Envelope. Vincent spent the day making preparations. He transferred funds between accounts, made 3 separate phone calls to his attorney, and cleared his schedule for the upcoming week. Then he waited. At 7:30 p.m., Camilla texted that her meeting was running long. Vincent replied with a simple, okay, and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. By 8:45 p.m., Blackwell had confirmed that Camilla, Prescott, and Tara Wilson were together at Prescott's apartment. Vincent drove there, parking his Range Rover across the street. The building was modern luxury, all glass and steel, exactly the aesthetic Camilla had always claimed to find soulless and cold. He watched the windows of the 14th floor apartment, visible from his position. He could see them moving about inside, drinking wine, laughing. At one point, Tara held up what appeared to be a phone, filming as Camilla stood facing Prescott, gesturing emotionally as if practicing a speech. Vincent remained in his car until 10:12 p.m. when Tara left the building. He waited another 20 minutes, then called Camilla. Hey, she answered, slightly breathless. I'm still with the client. It's been a complicated negotiation. I need you to come home, Vincent said evenly. Now, there was a pause. Is everything okay? We need to talk. It's important. He ended the call before she could respond. 47 minutes later, Camilla arrived home, flushed and visibly anxious. Vincent sat at their dining room table, a single folder before him, nursing his 3rd scotch. What's wrong? She asked. You scared me. Sit down, Vincent said. She hesitated, then complied, placing her purse carefully on the adjacent chair. Vincent noticed she'd reapplied her makeup and changed her outfit since morning. A dark blue dress he'd never seen before. How was your meeting? He asked. Fine. Challenging client. You know how it is. She attempted a smile. What's this about, Vincent? It's late. I imagine you must be tired, he said, after such a busy day of rehearsals. The color drained from her face. What? Vincent leaned forward. I was there, Camilla. Outside Prescott's apartment. I saw you practicing how to break my heart most effectively. She started to speak, but he raised his hand. Don't. I've heard enough lies from you. He pushed the folder toward her. Open it. With trembling hands, she did. Inside were photos, Camilla and Prescott embracing outside his office building, entering the apartment together, having dinner at an intimate restaurant 30 miles away. Along with the photos were printouts of emails, text messages, and calendar entries, all meticulously documenting the affair and their plans. How did you? She began. That doesn't matter, Vincent interrupted. What matters is what happens next. Camilla squared her shoulders, composing herself. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Nate. I plan to tell you this weekend. Our marriage has been over for a long time, Vincent. You're just too obsessed with work to have noticed. Vincent smiled coldly. So now I get the speech? The one you were practicing with your lover and your friend recording. He took a sip of his scotch. Tell me, what lines did you rehearse? Let me guess. He'll cry, then start begging. Camilla's eyes widened in shock, confirming his words. You said, he'll say he can't live without me. Probably promised to change, Vincent continued, his voice devoid of emotion. He'll say he'll do anything, just don't leave. He watched as she recognized her own rehearsed words thrown back at her. How long were you standing there? She whispered. Long enough, Vincent replied. Long enough to understand exactly who you are. Camilla's shock gave way to defiance. Fine. So you know, this doesn't change anything, Vincent. I want a divorce. I'm in love with Nate. Love, Vincent repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. An interesting choice when describing a relationship built on lies and betrayal. Our marriage was dead long before Nate, she countered. You were never there. Everything was always about the business, your next project, your reputation. And yet you had no problem spending the money from those projects. Living in the house my reputation built. Vincent shook his head. But you're right about one thing. This marriage is over. Camilla straightened in her chair. I've already spoken with an attorney. I'm entitled to half of everything, including the company. I contributed to its success with my designs. So, I read in your emails, Vincent said. You and Patricia Dunham have quite a strategy mapped out. Camilla paled again. You access my private emails? Just as you access my life, my home, and my trust, only to violate all three. Vincent leaned back. But I'm afraid Ms. Dunham's strategy relied on me being blindsided. I'm not. Vincent slid an envelope across the table to her. What's this? Camilla asked, not touching it. Open it. Inside was a single document, a postnuptial agreement dated 3 years earlier, bearing both their signatures. It stipulated that in case of infidelity by either party, the unfaithful spouse would forfeit all claims to the other's business interests and limit their claim on joint assets to 20%. Camilla stared at it in disbelief. This isn't real. I never signed this. But you did, Vincent said calmly. Remember the Rivera project? When you were devastated about losing the commission, I told you we needed to update our estate planning because of the company's growth. There were multiple documents. You signed them all. He watched realization dawn on her face. Vincent had indeed had her sign several legitimate estate documents that day, while she was distracted and emotionally vulnerable. The postnuptial had been among them, legally executed but never explicitly discussed. This won't hold up, she said, but uncertainty wavered in her voice. My attorneys disagree, Vincent replied, especially with the extensive evidence of your infidelity. You can fight it, of course. It will be messy, public, and expensive. Your reputation in architectural circles will be destroyed. Prescott's firm will likely distance themselves from scandal. But in the end, the agreement will stand. Camilla's face twisted with anger. You manipulated me into signing this. You're a monster. No, Vincent said, standing up. I'm just a man who always prepares for worst-case scenarios. It's why I've been successful. It's why I'll continue to be successful long after you and Prescott have faded from my life. He drained the last of his scotch and set down the glass with deliberate care. You have until tomorrow evening to remove your personal belongings from the house. Anything you leave behind will be donated. The Range Rover stays. It's registered to the company. You could take the BMW. I've instructed the security team about the change in your access status. You can't just. I can and I have. Vincent cut her off. Oh, and Camilla, tell Prescott his firm has been disqualified from consideration for the Westlake development. His partners won't be pleased when they learn why. As he walked out of the room, leaving her staring at the document that had shattered her carefully constructed plans, Vincent felt no triumph, no catharsis, only a cold, implacable resolve. This wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning. Chapter 4. Calculated Moves. A week after Camilla moved out, Vincent met with his inner circle at his lake house, 60 miles outside the city. Present were his attorney, Stuart Reynolds, his head of security, former Marine Derek Stanton, and Blackwell, the private investigator. The lake house, with its panoramic windows and isolated location, had always been Vincent's true sanctuary. Camilla had found it too remote, preferring their city penthouse or coastal vacation home, both of which Vincent had already listed for sale. The post-nuptial is solid, Reynolds confirmed, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. She's hired Dunham as expected, who's making noise about coercion, but they know they're on shaky ground. My guess is they'll try to settle. Vincent gazed out at the still water, reflecting the overcast sky. I'm not interested in settlement. Reynolds exchanged glances with the others. Vincent, even with the post-nup, litigation will be costly and time-consuming. Not to mention the publicity. I don't care about the money, Vincent replied. And I don't fear publicity. What exactly are you looking for here? Blackwell asked carefully. Vincent turned back to face them. I want them to lose everything, just as they planned for me. Stanton leaned forward. Prescott's firm, Alder and Associates. They're bidding on the Westlake project, right? We could make sure certain information reaches the selection committee. Already handled, Vincent said, but that only hurts his partners as much as him. I need something more personal. Blackwell opened his laptop. Prescott's background check revealed interesting patterns. He's cultivated relationships with several married women in the industry over the past 5 years. 2 resulted in divorces. In each case, the women had successful husbands with significant assets. He's a predator, Stanton muttered. No, Vincent corrected. He's a parasite. He identifies unhappy wives with wealthy husbands and inserts himself into the fracture. The same pattern played out with Camilla. Reynolds frowned. That's reprehensible, but not illegal. What about Tara Wilson? Vincent asked. The friend who helped them. What do we know about her? Blackwell pulled up another file. Single, 34, ambitious. Works directly under Camilla at the firm. Apparently, she expects a promotion once Camilla leaves to focus on personal projects. Their code for living off the divorce settlement with Prescott. Vincent's expression darkened. So Wilson helped destroy my marriage in exchange for career advancement. It appears so, Blackwell confirmed. And what of Camilla now? Vincent asked. She's staying with Prescott at his apartment, Stanton reported. They've been house hunting, but haven't made any offers. Probably waiting for the divorce settlement. Vincent nodded slowly, pieces falling into place in his mind. Here's what we're going to do. Over the next 2 hours, Vincent outlined a multifaceted plan that made even the hardened men in the room occasionally raise their eyebrows. It wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It was about systematically dismantling the future Camilla and Prescott had planned, along with anyone who had helped them. Are you sure about this? Reynolds asked when Vincent finished. Once we start, there's no going back. Vincent looked at each man in turn. When I built Mercer Construction, I had a simple philosophy. Never compromise on foundation work. Everything else can be fixed later, but if the foundation is flawed, the entire structure will eventually collapse. My marriage was built on a flawed foundation of lies. Now I'm going to show them what happens when everything collapses. As the meeting concluded, Stanton lingered behind. There's something else you should know, he said once they were alone. Prescott has a gambling problem. It's well hidden, but he makes regular trips to private games. High stakes. Vincent's eyes narrowed with interest. How high? Enough that he's had to borrow to cover losses. My source says he was in pretty deep before he met Camilla. A slow smile spread across Vincent's face. Now that is useful information. Thank you, Derek. After everyone left, Vincent remained at the lake house alone. He stood on the dock, watching darkness settle over the water, and made a call to a number he hadn't dialed in years. Lewis? It's Vincent Mercer. I need a favor, and it's not the kind I can ask just anyone. The voice that answered was rough from years of cigarettes. For you, Vincent? Name it. I need an introduction to someone who runs private games. The kind that might welcome a player named Nathaniel Prescott. There was a pause on the line. That's a dark road, Vincent. I'm already on it. Chapter 5. The Honey Trap. While the divorce proceedings crawled forward at a carefully managed pace, delayed by Reynolds through procedural tactics, Vincent implemented the next phase of his plan. Through Louis Mazzoni, an old contact with connections throughout the city's gray economy, Vincent gained an introduction to Eleanor Russo, who ran exclusive high-stakes poker games for wealthy clientele. With her raven hair, imperious manner, and background in behavioral psychology, Eleanor had built a reputation for games that were both discreet and addictively challenging. Prescott's a regular, she confirmed, sitting across from Vincent in her elegantly appointed office above an art gallery. Decent player when he's calm, terrible when he's chasing losses. And lately, he's been chasing. How much? Vincent asked. He's down about 200,000 over the last 6 months. She studied Vincent with shrewd eyes. But you didn't come here for gossip. Vincent placed a check on her desk. I want him invited to a special game. One with particularly attractive stakes and particularly skilled opponents. Eleanor didn't touch the check. You want him buried in debt. I want him to see a chance at salvation and reach for it with both hands. She leaned back. I don't set up players for deliberate falls, Mr. Mercer. It's bad for business. I'm not asking you to rig the game, Vincent clarified. Just to ensure the other players are skilled enough that the odds are unfavorable to him. Everything else will be his choice. Eleanor considered this. And the stakes? High enough that winning would solve his current problems. Losing would create catastrophic new ones. She finally picked up the check. I can arrange this. But I need to be clear. Once he's at the table, whatever happens is beyond my control. We're yours. Vincent nodded. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Meanwhile, Blackwell had made progress on another front. Tara Wilson, it turned out, had ambitions beyond merely taking Camilla's position at the architectural firm. She'd been developing a side business designing high-end residential interiors for wealthy clients, many of whom had come through her association with Camilla. She's been poaching clients, Blackwell explained, using her access to Camilla's contacts. Several have already signed contracts with her, thinking she's operating with Camilla's blessing. Vincent recognized the opportunity immediately. Through a series of shell companies, he arranged to become Tara's largest potential client, a mysterious investor looking to develop a luxury residential building with custom-designed units. The bait was presented through an intermediary, a chance to design an entire building, a career-making opportunity. All she needed to do was present preliminary concepts, work that would require weeks of unpaid effort before any contract was signed. Tara eagerly accepted, unaware that the project would never materialize. She began neglecting her actual job to focus on the phantom opportunity, exactly as Vincent had anticipated. The third prong of Vincent's strategy targeted Camilla directly. Through carefully cultivated industry contacts, he ensured that rumors circulated about her professional ethics. Nothing specific enough to constitute slander. Just questions about her design process, suggestions that she had taken credit for others' work, implications that her relationship with Prescott had begun while they were working on competing bids for the same project. In the insular world of high-end architecture, where reputation was currency, these whispers were devastating. Invitations to industry events became scarce. Former colleagues grew distant. Potential clients developed reservations. Despite Reynolds' efforts to delay, the divorce proceedings continued moving forward, albeit slowly. Camilla's attorney, Patricia Dunham, mounted aggressive challenges to the post-nuptial agreement, arguing coercion and lack of independent counsel. The legal battles grew increasingly acrimonious. One evening, as Vincent worked late at his office, he received an unexpected visitor. The security desk called up, "Mr. Mercer, Camilla Mercer is here to see you." She's insistent. Vincent considered refusing, then changed his mind. "Send her up." Camilla entered his office looking thinner than when she'd left, dark circles under her eyes partially concealed by makeup. She wore an expensive black dress he didn't recognize, likely purchased with Prescott's money. "This has gone far enough," she said without preamble. "The rumors, the sudden cancellation of my contracts. I know you're behind it all." Vincent regarded her calmly. "Please sit down." "I don't want to sit down," she snapped. "I want you to stop this vendetta. The divorce is happening whether you like it or not." "I'm well aware," Vincent replied. "Stewart keeps me informed of Ms. Dunham's various filings." "Then why are you doing this?" Camilla demanded. "Is destroying my career going to make you feel better?" Vincent leaned back in his chair. "I'm not doing anything to your career, Camilla. Your choices are. Actions have consequences, something you and Prescott failed to consider while planning to strip me of my company. Camilla flinched. That was Patricia's strategy, not mine. A strategy you embraced, Vincent corrected. I read the emails, remember? How you planned to never work again with your half of everything I built. I made mistakes, she admitted, her voice softening. But this level of retaliation is cruel, Vincent. This isn't you. Vincent's laugh was without humor. That's where you're wrong. This is exactly who I am, who I've always been. You just never paid enough attention to notice. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the city lights. The man who built this company did it by anticipating problems before they arose and eliminating threats before they could cause damage. The only difference now is that you've become the threat. So that's it. Camilla asked, "You're just going to systematically destroy everything in my life because I fell in love with someone else?" Vincent turned back to her. "No, I'm doing this because you and Prescott constructed an elaborate scheme to take what isn't yours. The affair is merely the justification for enforcing the postnuptial agreement." He returned to his desk and opened a drawer, removing a single document which he slid across to her. "What's this?" she asked warily. "A settlement offer, much more generous than what the postnup would provide. The BMW, $5 million, and a vacation property in Sedona. In exchange, you drop all other claims and sign a non-disclosure agreement." Camilla stared at the document, then at Vincent. "Why would you offer this now?" "Because contrary to what you believe, I don't enjoy this conflict," he lied smoothly. "I want it resolved so we can both move on." She picked up the paper, scanning its contents. "I'll need to discuss this with Patricia." "Of course," Vincent nodded. "The offer expires in 48 hours. After she left, Vincent called Reynolds. She took the bait. "Make sure Dunham knows the offer is legitimate." "You're really willing to give her $5 million? Reynolds asked. "If she accepts, yes," Vincent replied. "It's a fair price to expedite matters." What he didn't say was that the offer was designed to be tempting but not suspicious, substantial enough that Camilla would seriously consider it, but not so generous that she'd question his motives. He needed her and Prescott to believe they'd found an exit strategy, a way to secure their future together without further battle. In reality, it was just another foundation being laid for their eventual collapse. Chapter 6: The Gambit. 47 hours after presenting his settlement offer, Vincent received the call he'd been expecting from Reynolds. "They've rejected the offer," his attorney reported. "Dunham says they're confident the postnup won't stand and are prepared to go to trial." Vincent smiled to himself. Exactly as predicted. "You wanted them to reject it?" Reynolds sounded confused. "I needed to know if Prescott's financial situation was as desperate as our intelligence suggested. If it were, they would have taken the money. The rejection confirms he still believes he can win bigger through litigation. Or that your ex-wife is simply determined to fight you regardless of the cost," Reynolds suggested. "Perhaps," Vincent conceded. "Either way, we proceed as planned. Phase 2 begins tonight." That evening, Nathaniel Prescott received a personally delivered invitation to a private poker game hosted by Eleanor Russo. The buy-in was $50,000, steep, but not unprecedented for the circles he aspired to move in. More enticing was the note Eleanor had included. "Several potential clients for Alder and Associates will be at the table. A valuable networking opportunity, regardless of the cards." Prescott, whose professional prospects had been mysteriously dwindling, a situation he attributed to Vincent's influence, couldn't resist the opportunity. What he didn't know was that Vincent had arranged for 3 of the 5 other players to be ringers, professional gamblers who would ensure Prescott stayed in the game long enough to commit himself irrevocably. Vincent didn't attend, but received updates throughout the night from Eleanor. Prescott started cautiously, won a few early hands, then began playing more aggressively as the alcohol flowed. By 2 a.m., he was down $180,000, playing on credit that Eleanor had unusually agreed to extend. The final hand was almost poetic in its devastation. Prescott with kings full of tens against an opponent's 4 queens. When the last card turned, Prescott's total debt stood at $347,000, due within 72 hours. He looked physically ill, Eleanor reported to Vincent afterward. Asked for 2 weeks to arrange payment. I gave him 5 days, already stretching my rules. Vincent nodded, satisfied. He'll start liquidating assets immediately. Keep me informed if he approaches you about alternate payment arrangements. The following morning, Vincent received another update from Blackwell. Tara Wilson had submitted her resignation at the architectural firm, planning to focus full-time on her interior design business, primarily the phantom development project Vincent had dangled before her. She's already leased office space and hired 2 assistants, Blackwell said. Used most of her savings for the startup costs. Perfect timing, Vincent replied. Have our intermediary schedule a meeting with her tomorrow, then cancel last minute. Reschedule for the following week, then cancel again. Let her anxiety build. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings had entered a new phase. With Camilla's rejection of the settlement offer, Reynolds filed a motion to expedite the financial discovery process, forcing Camilla and Prescott to provide detailed documentation of their assets and liabilities. Vincent knew exactly what this would reveal. Prescott's mounting gambling debts, recently increased by the disastrous poker game, and Camilla's dwindling resources as she helped cover their expenses while waiting for the divorce settlement. 3 days after the poker game, Vincent received a call from an unknown number. "Mercer," he answered. "It's Prescott." The voice was tightly controlled but strained. "We need to talk." Vincent allowed a moment of silence before responding. "I believe our attorneys should handle any communication." "This isn't about the divorce," Prescott said quickly. "It's a business matter. I prefer to discuss it in person." "Very well," Vincent agreed, making Prescott wait again before continuing. "My office, tomorrow, for p.m. "No," Prescott countered. "Somewhere private. The Westbrook Hotel Bar, 7 p.m. Vincent smiled at the transparent attempt to control the interaction. "Fine. I can spare 30 minutes. The Westbrook was deliberately neutral territory, upscale enough for a business meeting, but public enough to prevent any scene. Vincent arrived precisely at 7 p.m., finding Prescott already nursing a whiskey at a corner table, his usual polished appearance slightly frayed around the edges. "Thank you for coming," Prescott said as Vincent sat down. Vincent simply nodded, declining the server's offer of a drink. "You have 29 minutes. Prescott cleared his throat. "I'll be direct. I know you've been systematically targeting my professional relationships. Projects I was in line for suddenly went to competitors. Clients I've worked with for years suddenly developed concerns about my firm's stability. The construction industry is competitive," Vincent replied evenly. "Perhaps your recent personal distractions have affected your work quality." Prescott's jaw tightened. "We both know what's happening. I'm here to propose a truce." "A truce," Vincent repeated, as if considering an alien concept. "Interesting. What exactly are you offering?" "I'll convince Camilla to accept your settlement offer, the $5 million, the car, the Sedona property. In exchange, you stop whatever campaign you're waging against my professional reputation." Vincent studied the man who had helped destroy his marriage, noting the barely concealed desperation behind his composed facade. And why would Camilla suddenly agree to this when she rejected it 3 days ago? Prescott hesitated. "I can be persuasive." "No doubt," Vincent said dryly. "You persuaded her to betray 12 years of marriage, after all." Prescott flushed with anger, but controlled himself. "Do we have a deal?" Vincent made a show of considering the proposal. "I'll need more than verbal assurances. Have Camilla contact Reynolds tomorrow with formal acceptance. Once the settlement is signed, I'll consider our business concluded." Relief flickered across Prescott's face. "Thank you. I think this is best for everyone involved." Vincent stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "One question before I go. Does Camilla know about your gambling debts?" The color drained from Prescott's face. "What?" 3 nights ago. Eleanor Russo's game. $347,000. Due in. Vincent checked his watch. Approximately 48 hours now. Prescott's shock quickly transformed to rage. "You son of a bitch. You set me up." "I merely created an opportunity," Vincent corrected. "You chose to sit at the table. You chose to keep playing when you should have walked away. Just as you chose to pursue a married woman while coveting her husband's assets." He leaned closer. "Everything that's happening to you, Prescott, you've brought on yourself. As Vincent walked away, Prescott called after him. "This isn't over, Mercer." Vincent paused, turning back with a cold smile. "You're right about that. It's only just beginning." Chapter 7: Collateral Damage. The following weeks brought a cascade of consequences that Vincent observed with detached satisfaction. As expected, Camilla formally accepted the settlement offer the day after Vincent's meeting with Prescott. Reynolds expedited the paperwork, ensuring the $5 million payment will be processed within 10 business days, just long enough to create a false sense of security. Meanwhile, Prescott scrambled to address his gambling debt. He liquidated his investment portfolio, sold his prized vintage Porsche, and took out a high-interest loan against his condominium. Even these measures fell short, forcing him to approach Eleanor Russo about a payment plan for the remaining balance. Eleanor, following Vincent's instructions, agreed to a structured repayment schedule with punitive interest rates. The arrangement would keep Prescott financially strangled for the foreseeable future, with the constant threat of exposure hanging over his head. In the world of high-end architecture, a known gambling problem would be professionally devastating. Tara Wilson's carefully constructed plans were simultaneously unraveling. After weeks of delayed meetings and vague reassurances about the Phantom Development Project, she received devastating news. The investor had decided to go in another direction. Her newly leased office space, hired staff, and marketing materials represented a financial hemorrhage with no incoming revenue to offset it. In desperation, she attempted to return to her former firm, only to discover her position had been filled. Worse, rumors had somehow spread throughout the industry about her unprofessional conduct in abandoning client projects for speculative ventures. Vincent monitored these developments through Blackwell's regular reports, making subtle adjustments to his strategy as needed. He wasn't merely content to win the divorce battle. He wanted total victory against everyone who had conspired against him. 7 days after Camilla signed the settlement agreement, just as the funds were about to be transferred, Reynolds filed an emergency motion with the court alleging new evidence of fraudulent intent. The basis was a series of text messages between Camilla and Prescott discussing how they would use the settlement money to finance a new architectural practice together. Messages that directly contradicted statements Camilla had made under oath about her future plans. The messages were authentic, intercepted by Blackwell's sophisticated surveillance, but their submission to the court represented a calculated risk. The judge could potentially question their provenance or even rule them inadmissible. Instead, Judge Monica Rivera, known for her strict views on honesty in divorce proceedings, was incensed by the apparent deception. She issued an immediate stay on the settlement agreement and scheduled an evidentiary hearing to determine if Camilla had committed perjury. The development threw Camilla and Prescott into crisis. With the settlement funds now frozen indefinitely and Prescott's debt repayments coming due, their financial situation became precarious. They were forced to sell Camilla's designer wardrobe and jewelry to cover living expenses while preparing for the hearing. During this period, Vincent maintained his public composure, focusing visibly on expanding Mercer Construction with 2 major new projects. He declined all media inquiries about the divorce, allowing Reynolds to issue only brief, dignified statements about seeking a fair resolution. Privately, however, Vincent continued orchestrating the systematic dismantling of his opponents' lives. Through strategic concerns raised by building inspectors, many of whom had long-standing relationships with Mercer Construction, Prescott's condominium was suddenly flagged for multiple code violations requiring expensive remediation. Then came the revelation that would shatter whatever remained of Camilla and Prescott's relationship. Vincent had saved this card for precisely the right moment. 3 days before the evidentiary hearing, Camilla received an anonymous package at the apartment she shared with Prescott. Inside was a USB drive containing videos of Prescott with 3 different women over the past 4 months, during his relationship with Camilla. The women were escorts, hired through a discreet service that catered to wealthy clients with particular tastes. What made the betrayal even more cutting was the timing. One encounter had occurred the very night Camilla had been meeting with her attorney to discuss strategy against Vincent. Vincent learned of the package's impact through Blackwell, who reported that Camilla had left the apartment in tears after a violent argument that prompted neighbors to call security. She had gone to Tara Wilson's apartment, only to find her former friend unwilling to offer support, blaming Camilla for her own professional downfall. With nowhere else to go, Camilla checked into a hotel using one of her few remaining credit cards. That evening, Vincent received a call from a number he didn't recognize. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "How did you know?" Camilla's voice was raw from crying. "About Nate. About the escorts. How did you find out?" Vincent considered his response carefully. "The same way I discovered your affair with him. I paid attention." "Did you send the videos?" she asked. "No," he replied truthfully. The videos had been Blackwell's initiative, though Vincent had approved the tactic. "But I'm not surprised they exist. Men like Prescott don't change their patterns. He did to others what he did with you." A bitter laugh came through the phone. "So this is my karma? For hurting you?" "I don't believe in karma," Vincent said. "I believe in consequences. Everything that's happened was set in motion by your choices, Camilla. I merely ensured you couldn't escape them." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "The hearing is in 3 days. What happens if the judge rules against me?" "The postnuptial will be fully enforced. You'll receive the minimum statutory division of our joint assets, approximately 1/10 of what the settlement offered." Another silence. "And if I don't contest it anymore? If I just give up?" Vincent hadn't anticipated this direct surrender. Part of him, a part he barely recognized anymore, felt a twinge of pity, but he quickly suppressed it. "Then it ends," he said finally. "You walk away with what the postnup allows. I stopped pursuing the perjury allegations." "That's it." Camilla sounded disbelieving. "After everything, you just let it go?" "The legal battle, yes," Vincent clarified. "But understand this, Camilla, I will never forgive what you did. Not the affair, not the conspiracy to take my company, not the elaborate deception. That stays with me forever." He heard her inhale sharply. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did," Vincent replied. "Tell Reynolds your decision by tomorrow noon." "Good night, Camilla." He ended the call, staring out at the night skyline from his office window. The conversation left him feeling hollow rather than triumphant. He had won, decisively, completely, yet victory tasted more like ash than sweet. Chapter 8. Scorched Earth. The day of reckoning arrived with clinical precision. Camilla, as Vincent had anticipated, chose to accept the terms of the postnuptial agreement rather than face the evidentiary hearing. The judge approved the settlement with minimal review, eager to clear the contentious case from her docket. The financial terms were brutal. Camilla received approximately $3.2 million from their joint assets, a significant sum for most people, but a fraction of the wealth she had expected to claim. All interests in Mercer Construction remained with Vincent. The properties, except for one modest vacation cabin deliberately left out of the postnuptial calculations, stayed with him as well. Prescott, meanwhile, faced his own day of judgment. Unable to meet the latest payment deadline on his gambling debt, he received an ultimatum from Eleanor Russo: pay the remaining balance in full within 48 hours, or she would inform his partners at Alder and Associates about his problem and the extent of his financial exposure. Desperate, Prescott approached Camilla about using part of her settlement money to clear his debt. The request led to their final, explosive argument, one that ended with Camilla leaving the apartment for good, taking only her personal belongings and abandoning any pretense that their relationship had a future. Tara Wilson's professional collapse continued unabated. With her savings depleted and no immediate job prospects in architecture or design, she was forced to take a position as a sales associate at a high-end furniture store, a humiliating step down for someone who had once expected to become a firm partner. The systematic destruction Vincent had orchestrated was complete. Everyone who had played a role in betraying him had lost something essential. Camilla, her financial security and social standing; Prescott, his reputation and relationship; Tara, her career, trajectory, and ambition. Yet Vincent found himself unsatisfied. The victories felt hollow, mechanical, the inevitable outcome of a well-executed plan rather than true justice. He had destroyed their futures, but found it did nothing to repair his past. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Vincent sat alone in his lake house, reviewing the final report from Blackwell. It detailed the current circumstances of each target. Camilla Mercer, now reverting to Camilla Winters, relocated to Phoenix, Arizona. Purchased a modest condominium. Applied for positions at several architectural firms without success. Currently freelancing with limited client base. Nathaniel Prescott, removed as partner from Alder and Associates following disclosure of his gambling debts. Apartment in foreclosure. Currently residing in a rental property in the suburbs. No known employment. Tara Wilson, terminated from furniture sales position after 2 weeks. Apartment lease not renewed. Current address unknown. Vincent closed the file and poured himself a scotch. The extensive surveillance no longer seemed necessary or even desirable. He had won so completely that continuing to monitor their struggles felt excessive, even to him. He called Blackwell. Discontinue all surveillance operations, he instructed. The matter is concluded. Understood, Blackwell replied. If I may ask, are you certain? Their situations remain unstable. There could be attempts at retaliation. From what? Vincent asked. They have nothing left to retaliate with. Our business is finished. After ending the call, Vincent walked out onto the dock, watching the sunset cast golden reflections across the lake surface. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened. The marriage he had believed in had been a facade. The woman he had loved had been planning his professional execution while sharing another man's bed. The future he had envisioned, perhaps children someday, growing old together, had never been real. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Reynolds. There's been a development, his attorney said without preamble. Camilla is trying to sell her story to the business press, positioning herself as the victim of a vindictive ex-husband who used his wealth and connections to destroy her life. Vincent felt a familiar coldness settle over him. Do we have confirmation? My contact at Business Insider forwarded her pitch email. It's detailed, emotional, and carefully crafted to paint you as a monster. And will they run it? They're considering it, Reynolds admitted. It's compelling narrative. Powerful man crushes woman who dared leave him. In the current climate, it could gain traction. Vincent considered his options. He had assumed Camilla would quietly accept her defeat and attempt to rebuild. This public counterattack was unexpected and potentially damaging to the reputation he had spent decades building. Send me the email, he said finally. I'll need to review exactly what she's claiming. The document arrived moments later. Reading through Camilla's carefully constructed narrative, Vincent felt a renewed surge of cold anger. She had rewritten their entire history, casting herself as a supportive wife whose success Vincent had resented, portraying the affair as her escape from an emotionally abusive relationship, and describing the divorce as Vincent's scorched earth campaign against a woman who had simply wanted freedom. Most concerning were the allegations about his business practices, implications of unethical conduct, regulatory shortcuts, and intimidation of competitors that, while vague, could trigger unwanted scrutiny if published. Vincent had believed the war was over. He now realized it had merely entered a new phase. Chapter 9. The Final Envelope. Vincent did not respond immediately to the threat of Camilla's media narrative. Instead, he spent 3 days constructing his countermove, working with Reynolds and a crisis management specialist named Diana Warner. The key is to neutralize her credibility before she can establish it, Diana explained during their strategy session. Once her story gains traction, even with denials, the narrative becomes he said, she said, and in those scenarios, public sympathy typically leans toward the perceived underdog. Vincent nodded. So we preempt her. Exactly, but carefully. Heavy-handed tactics will reinforce her claims about your vindictiveness. Reynolds looked uncomfortable. There's also the matter of the surveillance evidence. If we use it publicly, questions about its legality could arise. We won't need it, Vincent decided. What we need is for Camilla to discredit herself. The plan they developed was subtle but devastating. Rather than directly attacking Camilla's character, Vincent would simply ensure that her own words and actions became public in a controlled manner. First, Reynolds arranged a confidential meeting with the editor considering Camilla's story. Without explicitly threatening legal action, he outlined the factual inaccuracies in her account and hinted at the substantial evidence contradicting her claims. The implicit message was clear: publishing would invite a defamation lawsuit with serious financial implications. Simultaneously, Diana activated a network of industry contacts to circulate key facts about the divorce, specifically the existence of the postnuptial agreement and Camilla's attempt to claim half of Mercer Construction despite signing it. In architectural circles, this was positioned not as a personal matter, but as a cautionary business tale about partnership contracts and intellectual property claims. The most strategic element, however, involved Prescott. Through intermediaries, Vincent arranged for him to receive an offer: financial assistance with his remaining gambling debts in exchange for his public account of the affair and planned asset division. Prescott, now virtually unemployable in his field and facing potential bankruptcy, readily agreed. His tell-all interview with a respected business journal presented a version of events that directly contradicted Camilla's narrative. Prescott, attempting to rehabilitate his own image, portrayed himself as swept up in Camilla's scheme rather than its architect, claiming she had pursued him specifically because his firm competed with Mercer Construction, giving her access to industry information she had used in planning the divorce strategy. Whether true or not, Prescott's account was devastating to Camilla's credibility. Business Insider quietly shelved her pitch, as did several other publications she approached subsequently. Her attempt to rewrite the narrative collapsed before it gained traction. 1 week later, Vincent received word through Blackwell's remaining contacts that Camilla had liquidated her Arizona condominium and purchased a one-way ticket to London, apparently abandoning her efforts to rebuild in the States. That evening, as Vincent sat in his home office reviewing quarterly projections, his assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Tara Wilson. Vincent considered refusing to see her, then decided he was curious enough to make an exception to his no visitors policy. Tara entered his office with none of her former confidence. Dressed in obviously worn clothing, her once meticulous appearance now reflected her diminished circumstances. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice hoarse. "I didn't think you would." Vincent gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "I admit I'm intrigued by what could possibly bring you here." She sat, clutching her handbag like a shield. "I need help. A job, a reference, anything. I can't get hired anywhere in this city. And you thought I would provide this?" Vincent asked, genuine surprise in his voice. "No," she admitted, "but I have nowhere else to turn. I've lost everything. My career, my apartment, my savings. I'm staying in a hostel and working part-time at a coffee shop." Vincent studied her, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the tremor in her hands. "Your situation is unfortunate," he said finally, "but I fail to see how it concerns me." "Because you caused it," she replied, a flash of her old spirit emerging. "The fake development project, the rumors about my professional conduct, I know it was you." "Interesting theory," Vincent said mildly. "Though, I wonder what would motivate me to target a relatively junior architect with no direct connection to my business interests." Tara's laugh was bitter. "We both know why. I helped Camilla. I filmed her practicing that stupid breakup speech. I covered for them." Vincent leaned forward slightly. "Yes, you did. You helped destroy a 12-year marriage for what? A promotion? The vicarious thrill of participating in an affair? What exactly did you gain from it, Ms. Wilson?" She looked away. "Nothing. Less than nothing. And now you expect help from the very person you helped betray." Vincent shook his head. "Your judgment remains questionable." "I don't expect anything," she said quietly. "But I hope there might be some capacity for mercy. The punishment has far exceeded the crime." Vincent considered her words. On one level, she was right. Tara had been a secondary player, drawn into Camilla and Prescott's orbit through ambition and poor choices rather than malice. Yet she had made those choices willingly, filming and laughing as Camilla rehearsed how to break Vincent's heart most effectively. He opened his desk drawer and removed an envelope, sliding it across to her. "What's this?" she asked, not touching it. "Open it," Vincent instructed, echoing the words he'd spoken to Camilla that fateful night. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter of recommendation addressed, "To whom it may concern," on Mercer Construction letterhead. Tara stared at the contents in disbelief. "I don't understand." "The money will help you relocate and start over," Vincent explained. "The letter confirms you worked on several Mercer Construction projects as a design consultant, which, technically, you did through your firm. It says nothing about your character or reliability, merely confirms the professional association. Whether it helps you rebuild is entirely up to you." "Why would you help me?" she asked, bewildered. Vincent sat back. I'm not. I'm closing a chapter. You, Camilla, Prescott, you're all part of the story I'm finished telling. This," he nodded toward the envelope, "ensures you have no reason to re-enter my life with further pleas or accusations." Tara carefully returned the items to the envelope. "Thank you. I don't deserve this." "No," Vincent agreed coldly. "You don't. But neither do I need the satisfaction of watching your continued suffering. Now, our business is concluded. Permanently." After she left, Vincent returned to his projections, but found himself unable to focus. The encounter had stirred memories he'd thought settled. He found himself thinking about the woman he'd believed Camilla to be, the passionate architect sketching at their kitchen counter, golden light in her hair, and the hollow reality she'd proven to be. 6 months later, Vincent stood on the observation deck of his newest project, a 30-story luxury residential tower in the city's rapidly developing harbor district. Below him, construction crews worked with precision, bringing his vision to life just as they had on dozens of projects before. Reynolds joined him at the railing. "The view's impressive, even unfinished." Vincent nodded. "It'll be our flagship property. Pre-sales are already at 70%. Speaking of properties," Reynolds said carefully, "I thought you should know, the coastal house finally sold." The vacation home had been the last property Vincent shared with Camilla, kept on the market longer than necessary due to his reluctance to manage the sale personally. "Good," Vincent replied. "What about the contents?" "Donation to charity, as you requested. Nothing preserved." Vincent nodded again, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the ocean met the sky. "Any other matters?" Reynolds understood the oblique reference. "Closed. Prescott filed for bankruptcy last month. He's moved back to Ohio, apparently working in his family's real estate business. Camilla has remained in London, working for a small firm there. Nothing prestigious. And Wilson used your letter to secure a position with a development company in Seattle." Vincent absorbed this information without visible reaction. "All settled then?" "Yes." Reynolds hesitated. "Are you satisfied with the outcome?" Vincent considered the question seriously. The people who had conspired to destroy him had themselves been destroyed, professionally, financially, personally. Justice, by any cold calculation, had been served many times over. Yet the victory had not restored what was lost. The trust he'd once given freely was now locked away, perhaps permanently. The capacity for genuine connection had been damaged, leaving him more isolated than ever despite his professional success. "Satisfied?" Vincent finally replied. "No, but it's finished. That's enough." As they turned to leave, Vincent's phone buzzed with a message from his head of security,